Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I've been asked to talk about institutions, and institutions have it a little bit like an elephant. It's very difficult to describe them, but when you meet them, you immediately know that it is actually an elephant or an institution. And Kishore Mahbubani's books are a little bit of the same. When you hear that he has a new book on its way, you don't actually know what he's going to say, but you feel like being in an airplane where you sit and relax and you're complacent, you read a little bit and you eat a little bit, and suddenly you hear the dreaded voice of the captain. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now entering a zone of strong turbulence. Please fasten your seatbelts. And this is at least how I felt when I read not only this book, but also his former books. About institutions, I'll say three main things to start with. The first is that institutions cannot create or shape policies, and they cannot lead to decisions if the political will is not present. Institutions are not a goal in itself. They serve a purpose, and they are only mobilized if the goal cannot be reached without institutions or less efficiently so. And formalities cannot twist realities. You cannot use institutions to do something for which there's not the political support. I have three main items, and the first one is about the post-war system. The post-war system was a comprehensive system. We had the United Nations and the specialized agencies, the International Monetary Fund, all these kinds of institutions. And they actually supported each other. If one of them could not do the job, another one was called in. So the system was global, conceptually speaking. The institutions looked like multinational or international institutions, but in fact, they were a vehicle for the mightiest country, the US, to exercise power in conformity with the American political priorities. The rest of the world not only acquiesced with that, but went along because the US resisted, at least for most of the time, to act alone. And most of the other global nations felt comfortable with the system, even if it was an American system, because they shared the values of the United States and felt that it actually was trying to safeguard the global system. My second main point is, how does it look now? And if we for a time leave aside whether the institutions are shooting at the right target, there's no doubt that the decision-making is out of tune. The system works, is organized, is being put together still in the image of how the world looked in 1947 or 1949 or 1950, means that it does not take into account the phenomenal shifts in global economic power, partly also technological power, partly also political power, less so with regard to military power. But the decision-making has basically not been changed for almost 60 years, despite the substantial changes around the world. So people around the world still see the institutions not as consensus decision-making institutions, but still as institutions trying to channel, let us call it, the American model or the American view on the world. And that reflects itself in the picture that most people do not regard, or most nations do not really regard the institutions as theirs or global institutions, but institutions which are stuck in an old-fashioned decision-making procedure. I'm sure that if we look back and ask the people who shaped the system 60 years ago, they would be very happy and probably also surprised that the system has survived and that the rising powers have joined the system without really asking for fundamental changes. They actually jumped into the system, accepted it as it was, and tried to use it also for their purpose, which actually proved to be quite difficult sometimes. But they would perhaps be puzzled that the established powers have not really realized that they face a dilemma. Either they can welcome the new powers, they can share decision-making with them, they can relinquish some of their power, but at the same time they can reap the benefit that the values guiding or controlling the system continues to be theirs. In short, they have the option of shaping a global system in their image. Or they can hold on to formal powers, counting on players to see things as they used to be, which will be the case for a time, maybe a long time, but sooner or later changes will take place, and at a time and under circumstances which will cut deeply into their influence and open the door for others to shape a world order. What they cannot do is to do both or to do neither, and that is actually what they are trying to do now. My third main point is that the global system is out of touch in the sense that it does not really try to deliver on the current topical issues. And I have 4 points to illustrate that. The first one is that we are, to my mind, actually not in the era of globalization, but what I would call regional internationalization. And I come from a country which invented the Lego bricks, and therefore I see the global system being built in the same way. This meaning that you take one brick from here, one brick from here, one brick from here, you put them together, and when you have been doing that for some time, you actually have a global house. This is how I see the world developing. And that means that Europe, Asia, North America, other regions around the world are fast building their own regional organizations or regional institutionalization. And the next job will be to put them together to cooperate, to shape or create a global system. I am convinced that this is going to happen first with regard to monetary cooperation. We have seen in Europe how the Europeans have been able to enter into the era of the single currency, the euro. We can see how Asia is now discussing currency problems, how to cooperate about currency rates, how to make swap agreements with the credit arrangements so that you can actually move towards some kind of, let's call it, coordinated exchange rate policy. And the same will probably happen in North America. That will probably be put together sooner or later and be the foundation for some kind of effort to make a coordinated global economic policy, and maybe that will spill over one day into a more powerful body which could also do some work with regard to global politics. So that's my first point about the future regional internationalization, where the regions cooperate. When they have got a sufficiently strong regional institutionalization, they will move on to link these regions together, these institutions together, to make an input to global economic and political decision making. And it will happen first with regard to currency rates.